Hey everyone, Ryan here, and today I'm excited to review the 2010 TIE Defender, a set that may have been released many years too early, and we'll explain that later on in the review, but this is set number 8087 with 304 pieces, and when it originally released, it was $50. Now it's 2024, adjusted for inflation, that's about $70, and if you really wanted one sealed in box today, you're really looking at paying about $250. So this set wasn't really cheap to begin with, and it's become far more expensive, despite only having two really bland minifigures. It's not like it has an exclusive anything. And we should take a moment to admire just how nice the box art is on this set, especially on the back where it's supremely clean. I wish they would bring this style back. But opening that box, you'll find a couple numbered bags as well as a little bent up instruction manual, but inside of this instruction manual there's actually a really cool Hoth comic bit, which to my memory was only in this set, but it could have maybe been in some other sets around the time. And then there's also some advertisements for other sets from the era, which are just really cool to look at now. Now when I said the figures were bland, I almost feel like I'm being too nice. I mean, these are nothing minifigures. It's a really standard Stormtrooper, a really standard TIE Fighter pilot. Of course, they haven't aged the best as we're 14 years after the release of this set. They don't have any leg printing. The TIE Fighter pilot doesn't even have back printing. Neither of these guys have actual heads underneath their helmets. They were still using the black heads, which was standard for LEGO Star Wars for a long time, but we are obviously far past it. So looking back on this, these figures have not aged the best, and the figure selection as a whole has not aged the best, because modern day LEGO Star Wars takes a much better approach with sets like TIE Fighters. The TIE Bomber from 2023 is a great example where we've got a couple of named characters, we still got our TIE Pilot, we got something fun in the Gonk Droid. With this set, I don't think it's entirely wrong at all to just have a Stormtrooper and a TIE Pilot, but in the same breath, it's absolutely boring. And that right there is why this TIE Defender was just too early. If they had held off to the latter half of the decade, they clearly could have included a very cool Thrawn minifigure from Star Wars Rebels. I believe Season 3 is when the TIE Defender showed up with Thrawn. All right, fellas, here is the finished TIE Defender build, and I gotta say, it was a breeze to build. Even at about 300 pieces, I feel like I could build it in 10 minutes. It's just so simplistic and easy to do. It's just tiles and plates and bricks with a little bit of Technic, but the design overall, when finished here, looks really good. This is a set that I didn't like growing up. I really regretted purchasing it at the age of 13 because I felt like I could have spent my money better elsewhere, and I just felt like I kind of got ripped off by LEGO. Looking back on it, I feel a little bit better about it. I like it a little bit more. I think this one has aged very well because it was done in the gray color. It kind of bridges the gap between modern TIE Fighters and the older style of TIE Fighters. Like, it's still got some attributes that scream early 2000s TIE Fighter, but of course using the light gray instead of the blue screams modern TIE Fighter. Going into detail, we first need to discuss the cockpit and how it works. It has a printed windscreen piece. This is a very old 2000s windscreen piece, and then we have the printed piece on top. So nice printed details, no stickers inside of this set at all. We also have the red studs on front that add just that slight bit of color to these TIE Fighters that I think looks really nice. Now, unsurprisingly, you'll be able to open up the cockpit and place a minifigure inside, but you won't find any control panels or literally any detail in there at all. It is very bare bones on the inside. It's a very skinny cockpit. Now I'm going to let go of this, and there are times if you set it just right, it'll stay upright, but you got to get lucky. Most of the time it will flip right over, and there's basically two ways to look at this. Modern day, I think of this as a more than okay side effect of having a really cool function for the TIE Defender, but 13-year-old me thought this.
It just flips because it's top heavy. Apparently the designers didn't think of that. So now you gotta put in your little trooper.
Placing your TIE Pilot inside, he literally just has 4 studs to sit on. Again, there's nothing special about the interior of the cockpit, and with the pilot inside, it will sit just fine. You can maybe see him in there through the windscreen, but overall, I think that is a pretty nice cockpit with that one side effect. For the next feature, we have 6 Flickfire missiles on this set, 1 on each wing. If you've been a LEGO fan for any amount of time, you're probably pretty familiar with Flickfire missiles at this point. They hurt your finger, or they don't go very far. Pick your poison. The backside of the TIE Defender is pretty cool looking here. It's got the tri-wing design, which I really like. Just looks like a nice bit there. Kind of reminds me of the Tri-Droid, actually, looking at it from the back. I just kind of made that connection. But anyway, there's a translucent blue piece there for the engine thrust. That is it for engine thrust. There's nothing additional anywhere else. So a lot of gray on this set outside of the red studs on the front, the blue in the back a little bit, but still love that little bit of color there. Looks pretty nice. But there's the main and final feature on this set to discuss, which I think really sets it apart from any other other TIE fighter. So there's two main ways you may want to hold this TIE Defender. First off, with the engine on the back, you can just spin it, and you can see the cockpit actually stays level as we spin it around. And I do have the pilot in there, so it does weigh it down a little bit more. I think that's important for the way that this works, but you can do it that way, and it looks really nice, very cool. But the other feature that I always enjoyed doing, or maybe just the opposite way to do it, is to hold the cockpit and then spin the wings around the cockpit. I always thought this was super fun. You can do it way faster. There is a slight bit of friction in there. Sometimes I hear some bricks hitting, or even worse, maybe the wings will hit my arm. So it just kind of depends on the angle you're holding it, because if you hold it at the right angle, it can spin really nice and easy with very low friction, spin for a while. But dude, this is just one of the coolest features ever on a Lego Star Wars set in my eyes. You also get a nice breeze from that. Now, I will say, I did obviously have this set back in 2010, and I used it quite a bit because I enjoyed spinning it around. And what happened after about a decade is that some of these pieces in here actually physically broke. So it is something that can happen, where it can wear over time if you're using it too harshly or whatever. That shouldn't be a problem for most people. Certainly won't be a problem for me now. I'm a collector. I'm going to put this on a shelf. It's going to look real nice. That's what I'm going to do with it. But if you were buying this for a kid back in 2010, that's something that could theoretically happen. Again, it took a long time to happen, but it could happen. And maybe if you got a worse quality piece, it could have broken sooner or with less wear. There are just variables there that we couldn't possibly know, but that is something that did happen to me. And I was rather disappointed the day that I was spinning my TIE Defender, and literally one of the wings just kind of like snaps and just kind of like slowly falls off. It was rather sad. Oh yeah, do I need to tell everyone this is wrong? Because this is wrong, and we can't move on in our lives unless we all agree that that's wrong and this is right. Unless you're like the #1 TIE Defender fan, spending about $230 for a brand new TIE Defender in 2024 beyond is absurd to me. Literally no exclusive or unique figures. I don't believe there's an exclusive or unique part on the TIE Defender. It just doesn't make any sense why it's so expensive to me, other than it's just old and the demand is relatively high because of its return in Rebels, I suppose, just for the ship itself and to have the one that Lego actually released. Like, I guess I get it, but still, like, with the lack of like cool figures or anything, it's still a bit shocking to see the price so high. So I wouldn't recommend spending so much on it today. I also don't think it was worth its retail price back in the day at $50 or $70 adjusted for inflation in 2024. It was just too much money. But TIE Fighters historically have maybe always felt a little bit on the high side. I think this set's like an 8 out of 10. I've really come around to it, and I would love to see a modern rendition of it. I just don't think we will unless it shows up in another piece of new media. But then again, in recent years, they've done the TIE Interceptor, TIE Bomber, and TIE Fighter, so it's definitely not out of the question as they do more of the modern TIE Fighter models that they would get to some of the more niche ones like this. Anyway, let me know what you think about this one in the comments section below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and you can check out more LEGO Star Wars 2010 set reviews on the end screen now.